Welcome to Vedic Counsellor, where ancient Vedic wisdom meets modern scientific insight.
You know that feeling when your mind just seems to have a mind of its own? When certain thoughts just pop in, uninvited, and then decide to stay on repeat? Well, today, we're going to dive into one very specific system, Vedic Astrology, or Jyotish, to explore how it tries to explain this really complex inner world of persistent, intrusive thoughts.
I mean, it's a huge question, right? We usually assume that our thoughts come from us, that we're in the driver's seat. But this ancient system suggests our inner world is actually part of a much larger cosmic dance. So let's dig into that idea. From this perspective, where do these relentless thoughts actually come from?
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get to know the key players in the mind's cosmic blueprint. Then, we'll see what happens when desire kind of takes over. We'll look at how astrologers read the signs for this, check out the remedies they suggest for inner peace, and wrap up with the most important point of all, how this is all about tendencies, not destiny. All right, let's meet our cast of characters. To really get how Vedic astrology looks at this, we first have to get familiar with the planetary forces it says are running the show inside our heads. Think of them as the different voices in your own personal mental drama.
First up, we've got the moon. In Jyotish, the moon is the mind. But we're not talking about the intellect here. We're talking about that pure, emotional, flowing stream of your consciousness. It's your gut feelings, your moods. It's really the foundation of your entire mental state.
And then there's Mercury. So, if the moon is the emotional river, think of Mercury as the processor. It's the part of your mind that's trying to analyze everything, sort it all out, and apply some logic. It's the intellect trying to make sense of all those feelings bubbling up from the moon.
Okay, now let's get into the planets of desire. Venus is a big one. It's all about our sense of pleasure, beauty, romance, and sensuality. It's that pull we feel towards enjoyment and all the finer things in life.
Next up is Mars, and it represents a totally different kind of drive. Mars is that raw physical engine. It's our passion, our get-up-and-go energy, and yeah, our more primal, carnal urges.
And here we have a major player when it comes to this topic, Rahu. Now, in Vedic astrology, Rahu isn't actually a planet you can see. It's a mathematical point in space. But its job is huge. It's an amplifier. It takes whatever it touches, especially desire, and just cranks up the volume, sometimes creating illusion and really obsessive patterns.
And finally, we have the great balancing force, Jupiter. Jupiter stands for wisdom, higher knowledge, morality, that sense of right and wrong. It's seen as the ultimate teacher, the voice of reason that gives us the perspective and control we need to manage all those other urges.
So now that we've met the players, what happens when they start to clash? Well, the source material pretty much frames the whole issue of intrusive thoughts as a big battle happening right inside our own cosmic blueprint.
The core idea here is that these persistent thought patterns happen when the energies of desire, that's Venus and Mars, supercharged by that amplifier, Rahu, get so strong that they just overwhelm the mind, which is the moon and Mercury. It's almost like your emotions and your intellect get completely hijacked.
And wow, this is the perfect way to see it, right? It's this cosmic tug of war, often between Jupiter and Rahu. On one side, you have Jupiter, the guru, pulling for wisdom, balance, and control. And on the other side, you've got Rahu, amplifying those lower desires and creating these compulsive, obsessive loops. When Jupiter's influence is a bit weak and Rahu is strong, the mind can just get stuck.
And there's another layer to this. The text suggests that this whole imbalance is often tied to the idea of karma, specifically unfulfilled desires or experiences from past lives that your soul is still trying to work through now.
So, if that's the theory, how does an astrologer actually see this in a birth chart? This next part is all about the specific planetary combinations they look for as red flags for these kinds of mental patterns.
Let's look at a few of the most powerful combinations mentioned. A Venus-Rahu connection that's seen as a classic signature for taking sensual thoughts and cranking them up to obsessive levels. You add Mars into that mix, and now you got a raw physical urgency behind it. And when the moon itself gets directly involved, that's when the mind can get locked into a really emotional, repetitive loop.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how it's all organized. See, astrologers don't just look at the planets. They look at where they are in the chart, in these sections called houses, which represent different areas of life.
So as you can see, when these combinations pop up in houses related to things like romance, relationships, or intimacy like the 5th, 7th, or 12th, they're seen as especially intense. This table really breaks down what they're looking for.
Okay, so if a chart seems to point to these tendencies, is that it? Is it game over? No way. The system doesn't just diagnose, it also offers a whole set of remedies. And the goal isn't to just erase a part of yourself, but to bring your whole system back into harmony.
The strategy behind these remedies is basically threefold. First, you want to strengthen Jupiter to boost that inner wisdom and good judgment. Second, you want to pacify Rahu to turn down the volume on that obsessive amplification. And third, you want to bring Venus into balance so you can enjoy desire without it becoming a compulsion. It's all a rebalancing act.
So how do you do that? Well, one of the main tools mentioned is using mantras. For example, this mantra, Om Gurave Namah. It's specifically for Jupiter. The whole idea is that chanting it, especially on a Thursday, which is Jupiter's day, helps you build up the wisdom and detachment that Jupiter represents, making its influence stronger in your life. And it's not just about mantras, you know? The source lays out a whole approach that blends spiritual practices with really practical lifestyle changes. Things like daily meditation, fasting on certain days for certain planets, channeling that intense energy into creative projects, and even just avoiding specific triggers that you know get your mind spinning. Okay, this brings us to our final and honestly, maybe the most important section of this whole conversation. The source material is crystal clear on this. A birth chart is not a life sentence. It's seen as a map of your tendencies, your default settings, not a declaration of some unchangeable destiny.
And this is absolutely the most critical takeaway. The source explicitly says that if you are struggling, the first thing you should do is consult a qualified mental health professional. This whole astrological framework and its remedies, they're meant to be a spiritual support system, a tool to use alongside, never as a replacement for professional medical or psychological help.
So let's end with this thought. If the planets only show a tendency, a potential path, or a default setting, then who holds the real power to make different choices, to use these remedies, and to get help? You do. The system itself points back to you, suggesting that with awareness and effort, you are always the one who can rewrite the script.
If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel Vedic Counsellor. For personal astrology consultation, horoscope analysis, or Vastu consultation, you can contact us on WhatsApp 919219539215 or visit our website www.vediccounselor.com. Thank you for watching.